It's not about just scale or just social norms and systems. It's bringing those things together, and it's so critical because I'm sure we've all participated in so many pilots of shifting norms and addressing gender that have really not gone very far. You know, we like to call them pilots to nowhere, but we want to be on a different road. So we want to think about scale up. So I'd like to think about the expanded definition of scale up, which is deliberate efforts to increase the impact of innovations successfully tested in pilot projects to benefit more people, foster policy and program development on a lasting basis. So almost every phrase in that definition is critical. It's deliberate, it's planned, we're looking at impacts, we're scaling things that are successful, that we have evidence. So we want to benefit more people, and we want to do it in a lasting way. So, you know, a lot of what I've learned about scale up has come from Expand It, but also my work with CUSP, which I'll talk about in a second. So some of the things that I think are most critical are to apply a systematic kind of purposeful systems approach, where you're looking at the environment that you're working in, the whole social system. You're looking at the innovation that you wish to scale, the team that's supporting it, and that team that's, or the organizations that are implementing it. So systems approach is the first tip. Secondly, there's nothing more important than engaging stakeholders from the very beginning, from the moment you're designing your pilot study. You know, not at the end, not as a part of, here's our research results, but engaging the community leaders, government, you know, everyone who you think is going to have a stake in scaling this up. So involving them in the beginning. And then another thing that I think is really critical that is often not done is defining very explicitly what your innovation is. We often say, oh, the innovation is, you know, a new family planning method, or it's this training curriculum, but it's a lot more than that. There's values and principles embedded that need to be made explicit. There, you know, trainings, there's a lot of management issues. I like to call that sort of the interconnecting tissue that makes an and all of those things need to be carefully documented so that when you're adapting them and expanding them, you can be faithful to them. So fidelity is, of course, a really critical issue in terms of scale up. And it's not that you're going to do it exactly the same way, but if you understand how your intervention works, what makes a difference, what are the values, then you can be true to those things as you scale. I think another important thought about is balancing what we call horizontal and vertical scale up. So horizontal scale up is training more people, reaching more villages, you know, just more of it. Whereas the vertical piece is where you're embedding your program, your intervention, your change in the system. So that's where you're getting also systems change. You're putting in budgets, you're putting in training institutions, you're putting in work plans, et cetera. So think about, you know, institutionalization, expansion. And I have a quote from a friend of mine in Rwanda who said, I used to think about scale up as planting more trees, but I realize it's really about growing deep roots. So you need both, but you can't forget the roots for the trees. You know, you've got to remember both.